Of our top stories. And the EU's chief negotiator, Michel Barnier, has warned Brexit talks have hit deadlock, as he said the lack of progress is disturbing. Police in London and New York are tonight reviewing sex assault allegations against the Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein. And Sky News has seen the desperate conditions that migrants who have failed to cross the Mediterranean are being held in Libya. Hello there, you're watching the press preview. Our first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half an hour, we're going to be seeing what's making the headlines with the Observer's chief leader writer, Sonia Sodha, and the political journalist, Isabel Oakeshott. So good evening to both of you. So let's check on those front pages then. And the Telegraph reports that Theresa May's flagship Brexit bill has been put on hold because the government fears it could be defeated. The Guardian also leads on a Brexit story, saying the process is in chaos with no progress in talks with Brussels. The Metro reports that Hollywood film producer Harvey Weinstein is being investigated by British police over sex allegations. And the Star also leads on that same story. The Mirror has more on Harvey Weinstein, with claims against him being made by the British actress Kate Beckinsale. Whilst The Sun reports that Mr. Weinstein also faces allegations from the singer Myleene Klass. The Times reports that scores of child trafficking victims have gone missing after being placed into council care. The Express says a hurricane is heading our way, with winds of up to 80 miles an hour expected to batter the country next week. And Donald Trump has signed an executive order aimed at weakening Barack Obama's healthcare reforms. That's in the FT. So lots of different stories there to discuss with Sonia Sodha and Isabel Oakeshott. Good to see you both. We're going to kick off with Brexit, and there's quite a few different angles that the papers are devoting to Brexit tomorrow morning. There's the Daily Telegraph's Tory rebels stall Brexit bill, and this is the bill by which legislation is transferred from Brussels into British law.
Yeah, I think this is quite a serious story, actually. The suggestion is that the most important Brexit bill that is going through the Commons at the moment is going to have to be delayed amid evidence that there are so many rebels that Theresa May's faltering government may actually be defeated. And it looks as if there's serious opposition. We knew that there was going to be a problem with this bill, but coming fresh off the back of her very difficult Conservative Party conference, I think this will definitely not only raise questions over the progress on Brexit, but more broadly raise questions over the state of her leadership.
Well, yes, so it obviously questions for Theresa May, but also questions over the progress of Brexit.
Absolutely, and we saw the latest stage in Brexit talks unfolding over in Brussels today. We had Michel Barnier standing up and saying that sufficient progress still hadn't made on the three questions that the EU wants.
And he talked about deadlock, which is the word used there in the Guardian.
Exactly. And I think the sense from Europe is that there's very much a hope that this impasse will be broken by Christmas. But it's not looking great. It's not looking great on Europe. But I do think, returning to the domestic situation and this bill that has been sort of put on pause, it's very much a product of the sort of infighting that's going on in the Conservative Party at the moment. Theresa May doesn't have a majority. She's reliant on the DUP. I think people in her party will have seen that speech that she gave. And to sort of put it quite crudely, I suppose, the different factions in the party now scent blood. And you're seeing a lot of briefing, people who support Boris Johnson for the leadership, people who support perhaps Remainers like Philip Hammond, Amber Rudd. And so what we're seeing out play on our front pages, I think, tonight and, in the last couple of weeks, is very much the internal war that's going on in the Conservative Party. And it feels like that's what's driving Brexit at the moment rather than the national interest.
Would you agree with that? I mean, how concerned are you about this?
I want to disagree with that. I really want to disagree with that. Look, it's not good. I'm going to admit that. It is not good. I think that the Conservative Party...
It would be hard to put a positive gloss on it,
There are positive glosses I can put on Brexit, but on the state of the Conservative Party right now,
not so much.
Isabel. I think Theresa May is in a really weak position at the moment, and I think this is extremely worrying for the implications for Brexit, actually. I mean, never mind getting the Conservatives re-elected. I think Tory MPs have got to put that on hold for now. There's a long time until the next election. I think the problem that they've got is they're driven by two missions. One is delivering Brexit, which they're quite divided over how to do. And the second is worrying about Jeremy Corbyn and worrying about the next general election, which likely is very far off. They need to focus on Brexit, do that efficiently, do that in the interests of the country, not in party political interests, and hopefully, as far as they're concerned, if they do that well, then they'll be re-elected.
With Theresa May staying on as leader, or is part of the problem that she doesn't have the authority? And
well,
that's
in my
why
view,
these
that
divisions
is
are coming
part
to
of the problem. She clearly feels that she's sort of on a bound to keep going. I personally suspect that she's finding it extremely difficult and not at all pleasant, but I think she feels she's doing the honourable thing by staying where she is. I really question how sustainable this is. I think she probably will be there till Christmas, but as for the new year, who knows?
And I think part of the problem is looking at this from Brussels. So if you're a leader in Europe, you're looking over to Britain. You saw what happened in Manchester last week, the pretty disastrous speech he had, and you see a prime minister that you don't really feel has the authority to come to Brussels, send ministers to Brussels and make definite pledges, promises, offers that can get these talks unblocked. So I think her lack of authority in Brussels as well is really impeding the talks.
And we'll talk a little bit more about those divisions within the cabinet, because some of the front pages are focused on that. But let's go back to the Guardian story, which not only comments on the Brexit bill going through the Commons, but also the EU talks. We've had Michel Barnier coming out and talking about an impasse, talking about deadlocks, saying it's disturbing. David Davis putting a more positive spin on things, saying some progress has been made. What do you make of the state of play?
Here's where I think Sonia and I are actually going to disagree. Look, I think it's not in the slightest bit surprising that we're getting this rhetoric from Brussels about how it's all an impasse and it's all too difficult. And you know what, we're actually at a fairly early stage in what is going to be a long process.
18 months till...
You know,
and only 12 months until you've got to get a deal for ratification.
We've made some strategic errors, I think, in the way that we've handled this negotiation.
Agreed.
But the government is now accepting that they need to get ready for the possibility of no deal and going to WTO rules. Personally, and I'm not an economic expert, I'm going to have to bow to Sonia on that one because she's got how many degrees in economics? I'd like to remind us all.
Just the one.
Just the one.
Actually, it's half, to be fair.
Don't do yourself down. But, you know, I think not to have said right from the beginning, look, we can walk away from this, folks, was probably a grave error. They are now preparing for that. And do you know what? I don't think the sky's going to fall in if we go to that.
Which kind of leads us on to the other element of this story, isn't it? And the pressure on Philip Hammond. Calls for him to resign from Nigel Lawson, calling him a saboteur, according to the Daily Mail there. Remind us why Philip Hammond is in the sights of people like him.
He's in the sights of people like him because I think people on that side of the party, Lord Lawson's side of the Conservative Party, are genuinely worried about a Remainer like Philip Hammond, like Amber Rudd, sort of getting a grip on the party, and they're worried about them sabotaging what they see as the ideal Brexit. And I think there are people in the Conservative Party, like Jacob Rees-Mogg, that would embrace the idea of leaving Europe with no deal because they would see that as a pure Brexit. Now, I have to disagree with Isabel. I think it would be economically calamitous. I think Philip Hammond has found himself in a difficult position as Chancellor because on the one hand you can say, well, if you don't sort of show that you're willing to walk away with no deal, that makes your negotiating position weak. But I would say it's not really credible for Britain to threaten to walk away with no deal anyway because Europe knows how disastrous that would be for us.
They don't.
They absolutely do.
I don't buy this whole disaster thing. In what way would it be a disaster?
Because the EU is our main trading bloc. Our main trading bloc is about
a load of our trade comes from outside the EU.
It's our main
build up.
It's our main trading bloc.
It's not going to end trade with the EU, is it? If we come out of the EU with no deal,
it's going to make it much more difficult. But the Chancellor is in a difficult position because he is Chancellor. He's in charge of the purse strings. You could spend billions preparing for a no-deal exit, making all the preparations you need to do, building checks at border points, investing in border staff, investing in customs staff. There are huge investments that need to be made, lots of negotiations that need to take place.
That's one of the reasons why he's under pressure, is whether or not he's spending money on this no-deal option. But do you have some sympathy for that, given that he's facing quite a difficult budget coming up with not that much money coming in?
Well, I mean, he's clearly under a great deal of pressure. I mean, I think it's very difficult when you've got a Brexit negotiation process being led at the very top of the party by a Prime Minister who still this week couldn't bring herself to say whether she would vote for Brexit if she had her chance again. Clearly, the answer to that was she wouldn't. And, how can you have confidence in the process? But how can you have confidence in the process being carried out if your Prime Minister doesn't believe it, and nor does your Chancellor?
Well, and what do headlines like this, that here they talk about the talks, there's a picture there of Barnier and David Davis there, but also Sack Hammond down there. There's also on the front of the Times as well. I mean, this just...
It's embarrassing.
It's embarrassing,
and it's embarrassing to us on the world stage. And, the sooner that Theresa May does this reshuffle or gets it out of the way, then we can kind of park all of this nonsense.
OK. Lots to talk about after the break, including why the Health Secretary is calling for longer GP appointments. We'll tell you a bit more about that in just a moment.